live in interesting times. On tonight's headlines. A Caloocan Regional Trial Court convicted on Thursday 3 Caloocan policemen for killing of teenager Kian Lloyd de los Santos during an anti-narcotic sweep. The U.S. Senate took a defiant stance against President Donald Trump's White House on Wednesday, advancing a measure that would end American military support for the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen. German prosecutors raided several Deutsche Bank offices in the Frankfurt area Thursday over suspicions of money laundering based on revelations from the 2016 Panama Papers data leak. We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda. Now to the headlines. A Caloocan Regional Trial Court convicted on Thursday 3 Caloocan policemen for killing of teenager Kian Lloyd de los Santos during an anti-narcotic sweep. In a 35-page decision, Caloocan RTC Branch 125 presiding judge Rodolfo Azucena Jr. found police officer 3 Arnel Juarez, PO1 Jeremias Pereda, and PO1 Jerwin Cruz guilty of the murder of then 17-year-old de los Santos and sentenced them to reclusion perpetua. The 3 policemen were also directed to pay their heirs of de los Santos 100,000 pesos as civil indemnity, 100,000 pesos as moral damages, and 45,000 pesos as actual damages, and 100,000 pesos as exemplary damages. The court, however, acquitted the 3 of illegal drugs charges and planting of evidence, saying the prosecution failed to prove their guilt on these aspects. Police said the 17-year-old who was a drug courier who fired at them while resisting arrest. However, CCTV footage showed 2 of the policemen dragging the unarmed boy moments before he was shot dead. In the teen's final moments, he was on the ground covering his head with his hands and pleading, "Sir, please don't do it," according to eyewitness testimony. De los Santos family erupted in tears in the cramped northern Manila courtroom after the men were convicted of murder and sentenced to reclusion perpetua, which carries a minimum of 20 years behind bars. Meanwhile, Department of Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara said the prosecution of the case belies the administration critics' claims against Malacanang. He said the conviction serves as a warning to our law enforcers that in the government's campaign against illegal drugs, the rule of law and due process must always be served. Malacanang on Thursday welcomed the guilty verdict on 3 policemen and vowed that there is no intention to grant them pardon.
First, I think the president was just...
This is a walking testament that there is, in this country, as I said earlier, a robust judicial system, a working judicial system. This is a 6-month trial, and this is a record in heinous crimes like the case of Kian. It took them only 6 months to finish the case. It means that the prosecution as well as the defense really did their homework and finished the case on time. It is a deterrent of any commission of any crime involving men in uniform. You must remember that this is murder. There is intention to kill. The president will never tolerate that. What he said was, if you do it in accordance with your job, in the performance of your duty, then I will help you. Not when you violate the law. That is what he said. Well, we give the assurance that the president will never tolerate any intentional killing against civilians. from the man in uniform.
At an economic forum, Russian President Vladimir Putin says that the naval incident in the Kerch Strait is a Kyiv-orchestrated provocation.
Это провокация, безусловно. Провокация, которая организована действующей властью, думаю, что и президентом действующим, в преддверии президентских выборов на Украине в марте следующего года. Обращаю ваше внимание, что вошли в наши территориальные воды, которые таковыми являлись даже до присоединения Крыма к Российской Федерации.
Amid worsening relations, Russian President Vladimir Putin accused Ukrainian President Poroshenko of creating the naval provocation to boost his ratings ahead of 2019 elections. President Poroshenko has implemented martial law across Ukraine's border regions for 30 days in response to the crisis. Russian border patrol boats fired on, boarded and seized the 3 Ukrainian vessels along with 24 sailors on Sunday off the coast of Crimea. The Ukrainian vessels, a tug and 2 gunboats, were trying to pass through the Kerch Strait from the Black Sea to the Azov Sea, but were refused access and chased into international waters by 10 Russian vessels. On Wednesday, the EU strongly condemned Russia's actions but failed to agree on new sanctions against Russia. The U.S. Senate took a defiant stance against President Donald Trump's White House on Wednesday, advancing a measure that would end American military support for the Saudi-led intervention in Yemen. Senators voted 63-37 in favor of the proposal just hours after Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Jim Mattis had implored them not to curtail U.S. assistance to the Saudi military, arguing that pulling back would worsen the war.
And we made clear that they're considering debating a resolution on the Senate floor, which we think is just poorly timed. We are on the cusp of allowing the U.S. envoy Martin Griffiths to, in December, gather the parties together and hopefully get a ceasefire in Yemen, something that we have diplomatically been striving for months, and we think we're right on the cusp of that.
The Yemen conflict has triggered the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with the country now on the brink of famine. The U.S. estimates as many as 1 or 10,000 people have died, most of them civilians, since the coalition launched military operations in 2015. U.S. military backing to the Saudi-led coalition is based on non-combat support, such as the sharing of intelligence and training pilots in the best practices of conducting airstrikes with minimal civilian casualties.
That passing a resolution at this point undermines that. It would encourage the Houthis, it would encourage the Iranians, it would undermine the fragile agreement for everyone to go to Sweden and have this discussion. So we hope that they'll consider that, be thoughtful in how they proceed, and we're happy to give them further information if they should so choose.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Jim Mattis appeared before the Senate ahead of a planned vote on reducing military assistance to Riyadh, which has been blamed for high civilian death rates in Yemen strikes and is facing global ire over the death of dissident Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Saudi Arabia has acknowledged that Washington Post columnist, a U.S. resident, was killed inside the kingdom's Istanbul consulate in October, but has blamed his death on a rogue operation.
I don't think there's any change at all, if I heard your question correctly, Barbara. We have no smoking gun that the Crown Prince was involved, not the intelligence community or anyone else. There is no smoking gun. We have not changed that accountability for the murder is our expectation of everyone involved in the murder. Accountability is our position, has not changed at all. And by the way, I have read all the intel. I have personally read all the intelligence. I have read all the translations.
I do believe I've read every piece of intelligence, unless it's come in the last few hours. I think I've read it all. There is no direct reporting connecting the Crown Prince to the order to murder Jamal Khashoggi. And that's all I can say in an unclassified setting.
A meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russia's Vladimir Putin will take place at this week's G20 summit as planned, the Kremlin said, despite U.S. threats to cancel over Moscow's tensions with Ukraine. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the meeting in Argentina would start around noon on Saturday with brief talks between the leaders, followed by broader Russia-U.S. talks that could last around an hour. Peskov stressed the need for open communication between the leaders, even if they are unlikely to agree on all the issues. Trump said this week that as a result of Russia's armed seizure of 3 Ukrainian ships, he was considering pulling out of the one-on-one talks with Putin. South Korea's top court on Thursday ordered a Japanese heavy industries giant to pay compensation over forced wartime labor, the latest in a series of decisions that would strain ties between the two neighbors. According to official Seoul data, around 780,000 Koreans were conscripted into forced labor by Japan during the 35-year occupation, not including the women forced into sexual slavery for Japanese troops. Among those forced to work at the factories for Japanese firms, 6 survivors filed a lawsuit against the Mitsubishi Heavy Industries in 2000, seeking compensation.
그랬더니 일본은 중학교 고등학교 공부도 하고 일을 하면 또 돈도 벌 수 있으니까 너희들 일본은 가거라. 그래서 일본을 갔더니 공부를 간데 언제 없고 무조건 공장에 들어가서 일을 했습니다.
Seoul Supreme Court on Thursday upheld a lower court ruling that the firm should pay each of the plaintiffs unpaid wages or compensation worth about 80 million yuan, or that's $71,197. Japan says the victim's right to sue had been extinguished by the 1965 treaty, which saw Seoul and Tokyo restore diplomatic ties and included a repatriation package of about $800 million in grants and cheap loans. But recent court rulings in Seoul, including Thursday's ruling, argued that the forced labor was Japanese firms was not included in the controversial treaty. Going now to Venezuela, workers protest in Caracas demanding higher salaries. The country continues to struggle through an economic meltdown triggered by the slump in oil prices, followed by U.S. sanctions.
Estamos manifestando, hermano, por un salario justo. No nos alcanza el sueldo para comprarlo hoy en día, nada, hermano. Nos estamos muriendo de hambre la mayoría de los trabajadores, hermano. ¿Entiendes? Por eso estamos manifestando aquí.
Estamos protestando por nuestras convenciones colectivas, por salarios de hambre que hay ahorita en este país, que eso es una de las cosas de las fugas de talento que tenemos tanto en la industria petrolera como en Corpolé, como en la parte de la salud en estos momentos, que se nos están yendo todos los trabajadores.
Venezuelans are suffering from mass food and medicine shortages as well as hyperinflation. The UN says at least 3 million people have fled the country since 2015. Ministers from a dozen Latin American nations had a two-day meeting in Ecuador on how they can cooperate to end the massive Venezuelan migrant crisis that has jolted the region.
Podrá llevar a nuestra región a implementar acciones de manera que, según cifras de ACNUR y de la OIM, hasta el presente aproximadamente 3 millones de ciudadanos venezolanos han abandonado su país. Desde la última vez que nos encontramos aquí en Quito, la cifra, por supuesto, ha sido ajustada al alza porque el proceso de migración, el flujo migratorio ha continuado de manera sostenida. Estamos conscientes de la región de que la magnitud de la crisis migratoria que enfrentamos demanda con urgencia pasar de la declaración a la acción. La crisis producida por esos torrentes migratorios es transfronteriza, es regional y por tanto las soluciones que se deben o que debemos adoptar deben tener esa marca regional de integración, de coordinación.
Hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans are teeming into neighboring countries, fleeing a collapsing economy under President Nicolas Maduro, with falling oil prices and mismanagement leading to shortages of food and medicine. UNHCR Special Envoy Angelina Jolie met with Venezuelan families who have arrived in Peru, where they are receiving a helping hand from authorities, aid groups, and ordinary citizens. Thousands of Venezuelans have crossed the border into Peru in recent weeks, trying to make an end October deadline to be able to apply for a short-term residency. According to UNHCR, Peru is home to 500,000 Venezuelans. At least 150,000 have applied for asylum there since 2014.
Acudimos a él y aparte de eso nos escucha, nos orienta como amigo, como hermano, como padre.
And you have built a big family.
De mi sobrino, que murió de una simple neumonía, se complicó por no tener el antibiótico. Por favor, ayúdenme.
Please help us.
At least 10 people were killed after a massive blast outside a British security company's compound in Kabul late Wednesday. The Interior Ministry and police both said the blast had been a car bomb targeting a compound which houses G-Force, a private British security company in East Kabul. The attack was claimed by the Taliban in a tweet. It came just hours after Afghan President Ashraf Ghani announced the formation of a team for prospective peace talks with the militant group. The United Nations renewed calls for direct negotiations between Kabul and the insurgents. The Afghan government, Western diplomats, and the UN officials have in recent weeks raised hopes of finally reaching a deal to end the 17-year war. U.S. envoy Zalmay Khalilzad has expressed hopes that a peace deal to end the war could be struck before the Afghan presidential election scheduled for April. We'll be back with more news right after this break.
alas 4 hanggang alas 5 ng hapon.
Global temperatures in 2018 are set to be the fourth highest on record, the UN said, stressing the urgent need for action to rein in runaway warming of the planet. The State of the Climate report says that the 20 warmest years on record have been in the past 22 years, with the 2015-2018 making up the top 4. If the trend continues, the World Meteorological Organization says temperatures may rise by 3 to 5 degrees by 2100. The WMO says that one of the factors that has slightly cooled 2018 compared to previous years was the La Nina weather phenomenon, which is associated with lower than average sea surface temperatures. Researchers say now that a weak El Nino is expected to form in early 2019, which might make next year warmer than this one. The WMO report highlights some of the significant events in 2018. In the Indian state of Kerala, more than 5 million people were affected by floods. Similarly, in Japan, hundreds of people were killed by flooding. There were also heat waves in large parts of Europe, including the UK, leading to wildfires in some places, including Scandinavia. There were major wildfires in the U.S., with the Camp Fire in November claiming the most lives of any fire in over a century in the U.S. Greece also had fatalities from fires, while British Columbia broke its record for the most land burned in a fire season. Scientists involved in preparing the report say that the fingerprint of climate change can now be more clearly seen. Brazil announced Wednesday it is withdrawing its offer to host the COP25 UN climate conference next year, citing financial constraints. The news comes just days before the start of COP24, this year's annual climate conference being held in Katowice, Poland.
Nosso futuro ministro, eu recomendei para que evitasse a realização desse evento aqui no Brasil. Hoje a economia quase está dando certo apenas quase na questão do agronegócio. E eles estão sufocados por questões ambientais, que não colaboram em nada para o desenvolvimento e a preservação do meio ambiente. Isso é um contraponto, mas é uma grande verdade.
President-elect Jair Bolsonaro, who will assume office on January 1, has threatened to withdraw Brazil from the Paris Climate Accord, while also vowing to remove restrictions on the agri-business sector, accused of causing untold devastation to the environment, in particular the Amazon rainforest. COP25 was due to take place from November 11 to 22, 2019. Earlier this week, Greenpeace said deforestation in Brazil was worsening, with an area equivalent to 1 million football pitches cleared in just 1 year, from August 2017 to July 2018. Deforestation increased by 14% in that period. U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton met Thursday with Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro, the first high-level meeting between the United States and the far-right president-elect. Bolton arrived in a large convoy for the hour-long interview in Rio de Janeiro with Bolsonaro, who is set to take office on January 1, as both sides hope to bolster ties on the basis of ideological affinity. President Trump was the first foreign leader to call the president-elect. Bolton had recalled Tuesday, saying, "We see this as a historic opportunity for Brazil and the United States to work together a whole host of areas, economics, security, and a range of others. I'm really there to prepare to ground for two leaders," Bolton added. Bolsonaro is a fervent Trump admirer and has made no secret of his intention to reorient Brazilian diplomacy towards Washington. The Chinese scientist who claims to have created the world's first genetically edited babies said the trial had been paused following an international outcry over the highly controversial procedure. He Jiankui defended his work in front of a packed Hong Kong biomedical conference, explaining how he had successfully altered the DNA of twin girls born to an HIV-positive father and apparent medical first. A total of 8 volunteer couples, HIV-positive fathers and HIV-negative mothers, had signed up to the trial, with one dropping out before it was halted. He said there had been another potential pregnancy involving a second couple, but when questioned further said it had been a chemical pregnancy, a term referring to a very early miscarriage.
Because first, I must apologize that this result leaked unexpectedly, taken away from the community of the full data being presented immediately in a scientific venue. The volunteers were informed of the risk posed by the existence of one potential off-target, and they decided to implant. The clinical trial was paused due to the current situation.
Majority of the public don't understand what the word genome is. I'm quite interested.
A union of Chinese scientists issued a statement saying it resolutely opposes so-called scientific researches and biotech applications that violate the spirit of science and ethics, Xinhua said.
I feel proud, actually.
Prime Minister Theresa May said Thursday it was up to MPs to decide whether Britain leaves the European Union next March with no deal, despite the potentially catastrophic impact. Speaking to a parliamentary committee, May was asked several times whether she would personally allow a disorderly Brexit to happen if, as looks increasingly likely, MPs vote down the deal she has struck with the EU. She also rejected calls for either a second referendum on Brexit or to delay Britain's departure if the deal is rejected in the December 11 vote. She said they would simply find themselves in a period of more uncertainty and division, adding it is absolutely important that they deliver on the vote that people gave. The Prime Minister was also asked repeatedly whether she had a backup plan. May said she thinks it is important members of Parliament focus on the nature of this vote. This is an important point in their history. She added, however, that if the deal is rejected, some people would need to take some practical steps in relation to no deal. The government on Wednesday published an assessment of the economic impact of Brexit, showing Britain would be worse off in any scenario outside the EU. The Bank of England also warned that leaving without a deal would trigger a financial crisis. May said being inside the EU is not an option, so what they have to look at is what is the best option outside the EU, because people have voted to leave the EU.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to make a statement on the...
Eagle News International will be right back.
Introducing Regent Potato Crackers. Thin in size, big on flavor. Available in 4 flavors: seaweed, cheese, onion cheese, and French garlic. Get yours now. Available in all leading supermarkets by Regent.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it. That includes professional medical help from the best available. The Manila Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated is known as one of the most specialized centers in medical services, backed by several experienced physicians in Chinese medicine. At an accuracy rate of 98%, countless patients who visited Manila Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated have already been treated and cured.
Marami ko ospital na napuntahan, pero wala ring nangyayari. Somebody introduced me to Manila Beijing Medical Associated. After 2 treatments, gumanda ang pakiramdam ko.
My friends introduced me Manila Beijing Medical Associated, and luckily, I got cured. So I sincerely want to thank the doctors of Manila Beijing Medical Associated.
For the past 30 years, ang dami ko nang na-take na mga gamot. Nothing happened to me. So until one of my friend introduced me to Manila Beijing Medical Associated, you know what? All my illness was cured.
For any health problems or incurable diseases, you can visit Manila Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated, located at 843B Sabino Padilla Street, Binondo, Manila.
ASEAN in Focus. Monday to Friday, 2 to 2:30 p.m.
Automakers Renault, Nissan, and Mitsubishi reaffirmed their commitment to their alliance on Thursday as their leaders held their first meeting since the shock arrest of boss Carlos Ghosn. The talismanic Ghosn was seen as the glue binding together a complex three-way structure which counts as the world's top-selling auto company. With some 10.6 million vehicles rolling off the production lines last year, his arrest revealed brewing resentment and unrest within the Franco-Japanese partnership. Nissan Chief Executive Nissan Hiroto Saikawa, Renault's interim boss Thierry Bolloré, and Mitsubishi's Osamu Masuko conversed via video, sources and the Nikkei Daily reported. The rules of the alliance, based in the Netherlands, state that Renault and Nissan appoint 5 board members each, but it is the French company which names the CEO, while Nissan chooses the deputy. A CEO holds a decisive vote in the case of a tie in board decisions, while Ghosn has been ousted from Mitsubishi and Nissan. He remains CEO and chairman of Renault, albeit incapacitated for the moment, according to the French manufacturer. German prosecutors raided several Deutsche Bank offices in the Frankfurt area Thursday over suspicions of money laundering based on revelations from the 2016 Panama Papers data leak. Frankfurt prosecutors said they were investigating allegations that Germany's biggest lender helped clients set up offshore companies in tax havens to transfer money from criminal activities to Deutsche Bank accounts. Deutsche Bank said it was fully cooperating with authorities on the case, which it said was related to the Panama Papers. The Panama Papers scandal that erupted in 2016 with a massive data leak from Panamanian legal firm Mossack Fonseca exposed large-scale tax avoidance, laying bare how the world's wealthy and powerful stashed their assets in offshore businesses. Deutsche Bank was among hundreds of financial institutions whose names cropped up in the media reports. The Frankfurt prosecutors said their probe was focusing on 2 Deutsche Bank employees aged 50 and 46, as well as several unnamed senior staff members. Based on information from the Panama Papers, they are accused of failing to report suspicions of money laundering linked to offshore firms involved in tax evasion, even though there was sufficient evidence to suggest illegal activity. More news will be coming your way when Eagle News International returns.
Makipagtalakayan tayo sa mga estudyante, guro at magulang.
Ano po yung batas na pwede niyong implement para po sa aming mga K-12 learners po?
Makakatulong po yung K-12 sa buhay po. Sa tingin niyo po ba yung pag-i-implement po ng K-12 curriculum ay makakatulong po sa ating bansa?
Mas makikipag-aral po ang mga estudyante natin ngayon kesa po sa amin.
Yung mga magulang po na nagre-reklamo at kung ano-ano po yung sinasabi tungkol sa K-12 ay sila po yung mga magulang na hindi uma-attend o kahit minsan po ay hindi tumutong sa paaralan ng kanilang mga anak.
Ang iniisip lagi dito, yung pangkalahatang benepisyo. Tayo ba ay gusto na makatulong sa ating mga magulang? Ano ba ang gustong mangyari natin sa ating buhay?
Palapunan mga Pinoy kawal at kawali. Lumansag!
Mula dito sa City College of Manila, inaanyayahan namin kayong manood ng
Tol ng Bayan. Ngayong Sabado, tuwing alas 8:30 ng gabi, dito sa Net 25.
Global temperatures in 2018 are set to be the fourth highest on record, the UN said Thursday, stressing the urgent need for action to rein in runaway warming of the planet. In a report released ahead of the COP24 climate summit in Poland, the World Meteorological Organization pointed out that the 20 warmest years on record have been in the past 22 years. And that 2018 is on course to be the fourth warmest year on record. This would mean that the past 4 years, 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018, are also the 4 warmest years in the series. The UN agency said in its provisional report on the state of the climate this year. The warming trend is obvious and continuing, WMO Chief Petteri Taalas told reporters in Geneva. The report shows that the global average temperature for the first 10 months of the year was nearly 1.0 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial era, 1850 to 1900s. And here's Ben Bernaldez for Sports News.
In boxing, Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury needed to be separated here Wednesday as tempers boiled over in an explosive final press conference before the heavyweight title showdown. World Boxing Council heavyweight champion Wilder and Fury will collide in a high-stakes showdown at the Staples Center on Saturday, which could see the winner advance to a money-spinning unification bout. After trading verbal blows before reporters on Wednesday, the two unbeaten heavyweights engaged in an angry face-off that threatened to erupt into a full-scale brawl. British challenger Fury finished the press conference stripped to the waist and offering to engage with Wilder as the two men hurled insults. Fury, the trash-talking Gypsy King, appeared to have clearly arrested Wilder, who looked by far the angrier of the two fighters. The 30-year-old Fury, who has battled back from depression and drug abuse to land his shot against Wilder, opened by stating bluntly he expected to knock out the American champion 40-0 in 39 knockouts.
I'm telling you now, Wilder is getting knocked out by me on Saturday night.
People just don't believe just with my words, so I have to show with my actions as well too, which is just fine with me because all my life I had to do that. All my life I had to prove people wrong.
And in NBA, Oklahoma City Thunder guard Russell Westbrook celebrated another triple-double milestone and an NBA victory on Wednesday, while Houston star James Harden's first triple-double of the season spelled only frustration in a loss to the Dallas Mavericks. Westbrook 23 points, 90 rebounds, and 15 assists propelled the Thunder to a 183 victory over the Cleveland Cavaliers. The 107 triple-double of his career, Westbrook tied for third on the all-time list with Jason Kidd, the former Dallas Mavericks star who needed 1,247 games to reach 107, while Westbrook reached the mark in just 760 games. Westbrook, who seized a single-season record for triple-doubles from Oscar Robertson with 42 in the 2016-2017 campaign, remains a long way from Robertson's record career total of 181. Westbrook said he continues to relish every opportunity to chase the greats who came before him, saying triple-doubles, the achievement of double-digit totals in 3 key statistical categories, are something to celebrate as long as we win. Meanwhile, these are the results of the other games today in the NBA. And these are the stories for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez, and I am 1 with 25.
Thanks, Ben. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us. And I'm 1 with 25.